Coming now to regulatory interdependencies. There are three major types of regulatory interdependencies. We need to understand each of these, and then we also need to understand the effect of these interdependencies. Let's start with regulatory capture. Regulatory capture refers to a situation where the regulator passes rules and regulations which actually benefit the regulated entity. Now let's understand this through a simple example. Let's say that in a given country we have a regulator, and this regulator regulates the pharmaceutical industry. So we have the regulator, then we have the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry is the regulated entity, and the idea is that regulation needs to be passed which benefits the overall consumer. So obviously consumers are using the output of the pharmaceutical industry, and the regulator wants to look out for the benefit of the consumer. But let's say we have a situation where senior executives from the pharmaceutical industry become part of the regulator, and then there might be some people over here who want to eventually join the pharmaceutical industry. So rules are passed or regulation is made which benefits the pharmaceutical industry at the expense of the consumer. So this is an example of regulatory capture, and this is more likely to happen when the regulator is an SRO. Next, we have regulatory competition. This refers to a situation where we have competition between different regulators, and this generally happens across different countries. So let's say we have country A, and here we have regulator A. In country B, we have regulator B. Now, if country B or the regulator in country B wants to attract entities to this particular country, what it might do is reduce the level of regulation. So it might make regulation that attracts companies to this particular country, and that would be an example of regulatory competition. With respect to regulatory competition, the fear is that we might have a race to the bottom. So every country that wants to attract more companies or entities will try to make their regulation as simple as possible. So the term regulatory competition is from the perspective of the regulator. Regulatory arbitrage is a similar concept, but this is from the perspective of the entities that are being regulated. So if we have this situation where the regulation in country B is less strict, then some companies will want to move to country B. So these companies are engaging in regulatory arbitrage. Given the fact that regulatory competition and regulatory arbitrage happens because of differences in regulation across countries, it's important for governments to get involved and to recognize that regulatory competition might exist, and then companies might take advantage of the differences in regulation. The fact is that most governments have recognized the importance of global regulatory cooperation and coordination, and examples of this recognition are in the form of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and the International Organization of Securities Commissions. So the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision comes up with prudential supervision. So these are rules and regulations that banks need to follow, and the idea is that banking regulators in different parts of the world should use the framework provided by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision so that there is no advantage for a given bank to move from one country to another. The International Organization of Securities Commissions is an umbrella organization of securities commissions around the world. So, for example, the US SEC belongs to this organization, and securities commissions in other parts of the world also belong to this organization. This organization puts forward rules and regulations and frameworks that can then be used by the regulators in different parts of the world. Here again, if there is a consistency in the regulations used in different parts of the world, then the chances of regulatory competition and regulatory arbitrage go down.